Park Do-hyun survived because he understood something most powerful men never learned. Noise attracts attention. Attention attracts records. Records destroy empires. So Do-hyun lived quietly. He funded businesses. He hosted dinners. He smiled when cameras passed. And most importantly, he never intervened publicly, especially not for staff. That night, the restaurant was full of people who believed they owned the city without ever touching it. Councilmen, developers, men who never raised their voices because they didn't need to. Lena Brooks moved between tables with the precision of someone who knew how to disappear inside a room. She kept her head down, her steps light, her presence forgettable, until the wine spilled, not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to stain a cuff. The councilman's hand closed around her wrist, too fast, too familiar. Lena froze, not because she was scared, because she recognized him. Do-hyun saw it, the way her breathing changed, the way the councilman's smile sharpened. And for the first time in 15 years, Do-hyun broke a rule. She's done for the night. The room went quiet, not because of the words, but because of who said them. The restaurant owner, Mrs. Kwon, didn't look at Lena. She looked at the exits, because she understood something Do-hyun didn't. Lena wasn't invisible anymore. The councilman laughed it off, too easily. His eyes said something else. I remember you. Phones vibrated under tables. Not gang phones. Not criminal ones. Government phones. Lena changed out of her uniform with shaking hands. Not because she was grateful. Because she knew the countdown had started. She had spent 2 years learning how to exist without being noticed. And in one sentence, that safety was gone. You'd think silence means fear, Lena thought. But silence is strategy. She hadn't always been a waitress. She used to work in an office with glass walls and smiling men. She used to believe paperwork told the truth. Until she saw numbers that didn't add up. Names that appeared in places they shouldn't. Until a meeting happened without her. And her badge stopped working. She didn't scream. She copied files. She disappeared once already. Changed her name. Changed her accent. Learned how to carry plates instead of evidence. She wasn't waiting to be saved. She was waiting for the right moment. And Do-hyun had destroyed that timing. By midnight, the city hadn't exploded. It reorganized. Lena's apartment door was opened and closed without damage. Her landlord received a call he wouldn't remember. Security footage glitched. Police reports corrected themselves. No threats, no violence, just paper moving faster than truth. Do-hyun began to realize his mistake. He had prepared for enemies with guns, not enemies with offices. Do-hyun found Lena sitting alone in the empty restaurant after closing. She wasn't crying. She wasn't angry. She was tired. You should have ignored me, she said calmly. Do-hyun tried to explain power. She corrected him. Power isn't protection. It's control over the story. She told him everything. The files, the investigation, the deal that would have moved her into witness protection by the end of the week. And now, the city knew she was still alive. Do-hyun had options. He could erase her again, cleaner this time. Or he could do something unforgivable. Expose men who never expected consequences. Men who would burn the city quietly to survive. Lena didn't beg. She asked only one thing. If this ends badly, don't let them rewrite it. That night, Do-hyun made his first honest decision. At dawn, the city woke up confused. Bank accounts froze. Resignations happened on live television. Arrests were polite, efficient, no sirens. Just headlines that didn't make sense. People called it coincidence. Do Hyun knew better. The cost? Approximately 4 minutes. Lena vanished again, this time officially. No goodbye, no reunion. Do Hyun lost everything that made him untouchable. He still walked free, but alone. He didn't save her. He just refused to let the city pretend she never existed. The city didn't react all at once. That's not how systems protect themselves. First came curiosity, then speculation, then quiet panic. Park Do-hyun noticed the shift the next morning. Not in headlines, but in behavior. People who usually answered on the first ring let calls go to voicemail. Assistants suddenly needed confirmation. Meetings were postponed without explanation. Power doesn't disappear overnight. It hesitates first. Do-hyun sat alone in his office, watching traffic crawl below. He hadn't been summoned. That worried him more than if he had been. Because when the city is deciding what to do with you, it doesn't ask questions. It prepares narratives. Lena woke up in a place that wasn't hers. Not a safe house, not a hideout. Just a temporary apartment with furniture that looked rented and forgotten. A woman introduced herself using only a first name. No warmth, no cruelty, just procedure. Lena was given instructions. What time to wake up, when not to open the door, which name she was allowed to use. This wasn't freedom. It was managed survival. For the first time since the restaurant, Lena allowed herself to feel anger. Not at the city. At Do-hyun. You didn't save me, she thought. You made me visible. And visibility had a cost. By the third day, headlines softened. Language changed. Alleged misconduct. Administrative oversight. Internal review. The city wasn't denying anything. It was diluting it. Do-hyun watched interviews where men spoke calmly about mistakes while never naming victims. He recognized the tactic. If you make the truth boring enough, people stop listening. That's when Do-hyun understood something important. The city didn't want Lena gone. It wanted her quiet. Do-hyun had already made one mistake by speaking publicly. Now he faced a worse choice. He could stop, let the system absorb the shock, let compromise smooth the damage. Or he could do something irreversible. He reached out, not to criminals, not to politicians, to archivists, accountants, people who remembered everything the city tried to forget. Evidence doesn't need volume, it needs timing. And Do-hyun waited. Lena sat alone one night, staring at a phone she wasn't allowed to use. She practiced saying the truth out loud. Not dramatically, not emotionally, clearly. I didn't disappear. I was erased. She realized something then. They were afraid of her, not because she had evidence, but because she understood how the system worked now. And once you understand it, you can never unknow it. The second wave didn't come as arrests. It came as leaks. Contracts surfaced. Old emails reappeared. Financial trails reconnected themselves. Not all at once. Just enough to keep journalists awake at night. The city didn't fall. It lost credibility. And credibility is the only thing power cannot brute force back. No one threatened Do-hyun. No one arrested him. They did something worse. They stopped including him. His name wasn't mentioned. His presence wasn't acknowledged. Power didn't punish him. It outgrew him. Do-hyun understood the irony. He had spent his life mastering influence and lost it by telling the truth once, then refusing to stop. Months later, Lena walked through a city where no one recognized her. She had a new name, a new rhythm. No applause, no justice montage, just breathing space. She sometimes thought about the man in the restaurant, not with gratitude, but with understanding. He didn't rescue her. He disrupted the lie long enough for her to step out. The city survived. It always does. But it remembered the moment it almost didn't. All because one man spoke, and one woman refused to disappear quietly. Cities recover faster than people. Within weeks, traffic returned to normal. Restaurants refilled. Meetings resumed with new faces in old chairs. To the outside world, nothing had changed, but Park Do-hyun noticed the cracks. Certain names were never spoken again. Certain buildings stayed dark at night. Certain invitations stopped arriving. Normal had returned, but it felt rehearsed. He walked through familiar streets and felt like a guest in a place he once helped design. Power hadn't vanished. It had changed owners, and that made it more dangerous. Lena's new life was quieter, too quiet. She learned the rhythm of her new city quickly. Which cafes asked no questions, which neighbors never lingered, which news stories disappeared overnight. Witness protection didn't erase memory, it sharpened it. Lena could now spot people who belonged to systems. The way they scanned rooms, the way they avoided cameras instinctively, the way they never spoke emotionally. She realized something unsettling. The city she escaped from wasn't unique. It was a template. When powerful men fall, others don't celebrate. They calculate. Do-hyun saw new intermediaries rise. Younger, more polite, more ruthless. They didn't threaten. They offered continuity. "We'd like to understand your concerns," they said. "Tell us what you know before someone else does." Do-hyun declined every meeting. That's when he understood. He was no longer dangerous because of what he could do. He was dangerous because of what he remembered. Do-hyun began writing. Not memoirs, not confessions. Maps, connections, patterns, repeating structures across decades. He realized corruption didn't move randomly. It moved geographically, predictably. Restaurants, real estate, charities, campaigns, different names, same flow. He stored it all offline, analog, unsearchable. Because the most threatening thing to a system isn't exposure, it is comprehension. Lena received a letter one evening. No return address, no greeting, just a sentence. "They are building it again." She stared at the paper for a long time. Witness protection promised safety, not purpose. She could stay quiet, disappear forever, or she could do something reckless. She remembered the restaurant, not the fear, the moment the lie cracked. And she made a decision no program could approve. Do-hyun and Lena never contacted each other. That was the point. But they began moving in parallel. Do-hyun quietly fed understanding to people who asked the right questions. Lena chose visibility, selectively, not testimony, not accusations, education. She spoke anonymously, wrote carefully, explained systems without naming names. The city didn't notice at first. That worried everyone who mattered. Silence returned, aggressively. Articles were buried, accounts flagged, invitations revoked. Lena lost opportunities without explanation. Do-hyun lost access to spaces he'd never lost before. No threats, just friction. That's how modern power fights. By exhausting you until you stop. Neither of them stopped. Years later, a young journalist uncovered something strange. Patterns that matched stories she'd heard before. Connections she couldn't unsee. She didn't know Lena. She'd never met Do-hyun. But their work had left footprints. That's how real change happens. Not explosions, not heroes, but knowledge passed quietly. until someone else is brave enough to pick it up. The city didn't collapse, it adapted, but it never forgot the moment it realized someone was watching it back. One man broke silence, one woman refused erasure, and long after they disappeared from the story, the city never felt safe again. They did not plan to meet. That was the rule they both understood. Too many eyes, too many consequences. But time has a way of eroding rules that were built for emergencies, not for living. Lena noticed him first, not because he stood out, but because he was trying not to. Same posture, same stillness, different city. She didn't speak. She sat 2 tables away in the cafe, pretending to read while memorizing the way his hand rested near his cup. When Do-hyun finally looked up, their eyes met. No shock, only recognition, like finding a scar you didn't know someone else carried too. They did not smile, they stayed silent, and somehow that silence felt louder than the night everything broke. They walked, no destination, crowded streets where anonymity wrapped around them like permission. Do-hyun spoke first, carefully. "I thought you'd left the country." Lena answered just as carefully. "I thought you'd stop looking." They laughed softly, the kind of laugh that carries relief and grief at the same time. This wasn't romance yet. It was recognition. 2 people who understood the cost of speaking and the heavier cost of not speaking at all. There is something dangerous about falling for someone who knows your worst decisions. Lena felt it when Do-hyun admitted, "I replayed that night more than I should." She felt it when he didn't frame himself as a hero. She felt it when he said, "I didn't save you. I just stopped pretending I didn't see." Desire crept in quietly, not physical at first, emotional. The desire to be understood without explanation, to be close to someone who wouldn't ask you to simplify your story. They sat in his apartment, sparse, temporary, unclaimed. The city hummed below. Too close now. Lena noticed the scar near his collarbone. He noticed the way she flinched when sirens passed. Their hands brushed, didn't move away, didn't close the distance either. This was the most dangerous moment of all, because intimacy creates leverage, and they both knew what leverage costs. Lena whispered, "If this happens, it won't be simple." Do-hyun answered, "Nothing worth keeping ever is." They didn't touch. That restraint made it worse. Romance didn't arrive as passion. It arrived as habit. Shared silence, unsent messages, late-night conversations that ended just before confession. They learned each other slowly. Lena learned Do-hyun was gentler than his reputation allowed. Do-hyun learned Lena carried anger like a controlled fire, warming, not destructive. The city noticed something too, because love changes posture, and posture attracts attention. Someone followed Lena, not clumsy, not threatening, just close enough to be intentional. Do-hyun knew what it meant immediately. The city wasn't afraid of what they had done. It was afraid of what they might do together. That night, Do-hyun made a brutal choice. Distance, protection through absence. He didn't explain. He disappeared. Lena understood before the pain arrived. That was the cruel part. She didn't chase him. She didn't beg. She mourned quietly. The loss of something that never officially existed, but felt real enough to grieve. This is how the city wins, she thought. It doesn't kill love. It convinces you to abandon it. Months later, Do-hyun returned. Not because it was safe, because love untreated becomes regret. He found her where she least expected him. No apology, just honesty. "I thought distance would protect you. It only proved I was afraid." Lena didn't answer immediately. Then she said, "If we do this, we don't do it halfway." Their romance was not loud. It was deliberate. They chose each other knowing the city would never approve. Safety would never be guaranteed. Silence would never fully return. But love, real love, doesn't demand comfort. It demands truth. They didn't promise forever. They promised presence. They loved each other the way survivors do, without fantasy, without denial, without apology. Not because it was safe, but because after everything they'd seen, love was the only rebellion left. Love did not arrive for them like relief. It arrived like pressure. Do-hyun did not move in with Lena. He didn't stay the night. He stayed close, deliberately unfinished, because closeness without permanence felt safer. Lena noticed this immediately, not as rejection, as fear. She had seen fear before, in boardrooms, hallways, silence. This was different. This fear wasn't about survival. It was about loss, and that terrified her more than danger ever had. Some nights, they sat together without touching, knees inches apart, breathing aligned. The wanting was constant, unresolved, and strangely sacred. Lena had survived men who wanted her body. That didn't confuse her. What confused her was Do-hyun's restraint. He looked at her like she was something he didn't want to damage. "I don't want to be protected," she thought. "I want to be chosen." She wanted his attention without caution, his hands without hesitation, his truth without edits. But love with Do-hyun came with pauses. Every pause carried history, and history weighed more than desire. It happened without planning. A storm outside, power flickering. They laughed, the kind of laugh that breaks tension accidentally. He reached for her instinctively, then stopped. She didn't. She closed the distance herself, not urgently, decisively. This wasn't desperation. It was permission. Their kiss was slow, almost reverent, years of restraint breaking quietly. No urgency, no conquest, just relief. Afterward, they didn't speak. They lay awake, listening to the city remind them they were still being watched. The city noticed again, not because they were careless, because love changes routine. Patterns shifted. People noticed absences. The city doesn't punish love immediately. It documents it. Do-hyun received subtle warnings. Meetings cancelled, accounts delayed, doors politely closed. No threats, just reminders. Lena felt it too. Emails unanswered, opportunities withdrawn. The city didn't hate them, it measured them. Do-hyun began pulling back again, not from love, from hope. He had seen this story before. Not in romance, in power. Anything you care about becomes leverage. He began preparing for the day he might have to disappear again. Lena noticed. She said nothing, which hurt more than arguing would have. One night, she finally spoke. Not loudly, not emotionally. "You don't get to love me halfway," she said, "and call it protection." She told him something he didn't expect. She wasn't afraid of losing him. She was afraid of becoming invisible again inside his caution. "I didn't survive all of that to be a secret." That broke something in him, and healed something too. The pushback escalated. A public smear, a quiet investigation, a resurfaced allegation with no evidence. The city was reminding Do-hyun of the rules. Lena realized the truth before he said it. They would not be allowed to exist peacefully together. Not because of love, because of what they represented. Do-hyun offered to leave, disappear, give Lena peace. She refused. "I won't build a future on your absence." They decided instead on something radical, transparency. They would not expose everything. They would expose just enough. Love became strategy. Their intimacy deepened under threat, not frantic, focused. They learned each other's fears, each other's tells. They made love like people who understood time was borrowed, not rushed, intentional. Afterward, Lena whispered, "If this ends badly, I don't regret choosing you." Do-hyun finally said what he'd been afraid to admit. "I was never brave until you." The city hesitated. It didn't expect resistance shaped like calm. Evidence surfaced, selectively. Not enough to destroy, enough to warn. The message was clear. We can coexist if you stay visible, but harmless. Lena laughed when she understood. "They're afraid," she said. And she was right. They didn't win. They weren't defeated. They persisted, which is worse for systems. They chose a quieter life, not hidden, not loud, just honest. They walked streets together, held hands openly, dared the city to look. Years later, the story softened. People forgot details, but the pattern remained. Somewhere in the city, a woman and a man lived without apology. Not untouched, but unbroken. Love didn't save them. It didn't fix the city. But it gave them something power never could. A reason to stay visible, even when the world preferred their silence.